How we doing, everybody, and the future Motocross radio listeners? We've got another episode coming to you right here from the Legends Room in Central Florida. Been a tough week for us this week. We had Hurricane Ian come through. We very fortunate to get through that one, get our power back on so we can bring you another episode. But we all want to think about all the people that were affected by that down in South Florida. I'm your host, RJ Huss. We got two great in-studio guests with us today. Very good friend of mine, Mr. Michael Byrne. How you doing, Michael?
I'm doing good, man. How are you?
The Burner 2.6, and then we've got our 250 Pro Sport and Open Pro Sport Future MX team rider, Mr. Ayden Shive. Ayden, how we doing, bud?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm glad to have you here. I'm get to do an episode. We'll talk a little bit about the Future MX team, and Ayden, some of your background growing up, and Burner, being a professional for the years that you were, and we'll start talking about some of the stuff you're doing now, too. We've also got our audio engineer with us, Mr. Tyler Kasha, joining us today. What's going on, Tyler?
What's going on?
Well, Sugar Shane bailed on us. That's
typical.
Thoughts and prayers.
Yeah, I mean, truthfully, we really didn't know if we were going to have a show this week with the episode with the hurricane come through. And, you know, we obviously are extremely grateful that it didn't come up about 100 miles north of where it did, because we probably would not be sitting here right now. We were out of power for a few days, but we did get it restored yesterday. So we decided to do the episode still. And it just kind of was a last-minute plan. So Shane's not going to be able to make it on this episode. Can't really give him too much of a hard time about that with the situation that's been going on this week. There's still hundreds of thousands of people without power and quite a few people that lost their homes, as that was a very devastating storm to enter in South Florida down there. So
I think it's worth noting that Shane's fine. He just had other plans.
Yeah, he's not here not because it wasn't storm-related. He just got some personal things. So that's okay. We'll do the episode without him and roll on, and we've got a lot to talk about here. And I want to start off with Burner. Growing up in Australia, not many listeners know, the actual continent of Australia and the layout of how that goes. But can you tell us about growing up in Australia? I mean, is it similar to Florida in the sense of having multiple tracks right around you, or was it like hour-long drives everywhere you had to go?
No, for me, in Australia where I was, up in North Queensland, I mean, I grew up on 5,500 acres.
Okay.
So my family was a farming family. So I had plenty of space to ride around on. So my actual first track that my dad ever built, he built it with a grader. It was a flat track.
Oh,
so
there you go.
I got a PW for Christmas, and then Dad built me a flat track. I was just out in the back paddock on the flat track that he built with the grader. So I think I fell the first day and burnt my leg, and every day from that, like, go to school, come home. I had plenty of places to ride. So I was fortunate. Just with my situation, I was always able to ride.
Well, with growing up on that much land and stuff, you said your first bike was the Pee-wee?
Yep.
I'm assuming after that you evolved up into a 60?
Yep.
And then was it just kind of like, all right, Burner, see you later, go ride and just roam the land?
Well, I got my Pee-wee because my brother had started riding some off-road stuff with our neighbors and stuff like that, just for fun. And then obviously my older brother is 7 years older than me, so I was just that little whippersnapper chasing around my big brother. So everything he did, I wanted it to do. So that's pretty much where, because before that we grew up riding horses, and my dad played polocross, and you getting the cows in.
What is polocross?
It's like polo, but it's instead of hitting it with a wooden mallet, it's actually like a racket. So then you pick up this sponge bowl, and you it's essentially like polo, but it's just
I've never
a little
heard
tweaked.
Of that.
Yeah,
Never.
You'll have to YouTube it. But yeah, that's what we grew up doing, farming and horses. So my dad never rode. We had like an old Yamaha ag bike that he used to use to check the fields and stuff in. But
yeah,
we were definitely not a motocross family at that point.
Right. So coming up there, Pee Wee, 60s, at what point do you actually start traveling around to go racing?
In that time back in Australia, we had a lot of races. So a lot of like state type races, just like the Florida Gold Cup. You know, like we had the Queensland Championship. So there was a lot of racing going on at that point in Australia. Even though obviously the population and the level's not the same as here, but we definitely had a lot of opportunities to ride. But the first 4 years of my career, it was all flat track. You know, I never did any motocross till I was, you know, like 12 years old. So,
Okay.
It was, you know, there's going to be a flat track race here, Australian Championship, blah, 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 you know, in Queensland. So, I had won 3 Australian championships as a, you know, whether on 60s and 80 cc's. And then at that point was, then we started getting into the motocross side of things and stepping away from the flat track.
Was the motocross there in Queensland? I mean, was it available?
Yeah, no, it was definitely, you know, we had like a local club in Claremont where I grew up. You know, they had a big flat track, big oval track, and then a big TT style track, you know, with lefts and rights. So yeah, that was what it consisted of back then, and then the club built a motocross track, and then it just kind of slowly progressed into that.
So you get going there, it's kind of where 12 years old, you say you started basically in the motocross side.
Yep.
I mean, you go from riding pastures and flat track to start getting serious, I would say, on motocross?
Yeah, on the local side for sure. You know, all the Queensland Championship stuff. I'm not sure. I was fortunate enough to win a bunch of that kind of stuff. And then when I was almost done with school, it was time to venture out a little bit more for some more competition. So then it was more, you know, we drive 10 hours down to Brisbane, and then the guys from Sydney would come down and get some competition that way. So definitely there was and at that time the racing was, there was a lot of different styles of racing too. You know, you had flat track, and then you had motocross, you had arena cross, then you had 4-stroke races too. So I think in that era, you know, Andrew McFarlane, Chad, Brett Metcalf, and myself, we were fortunate enough to live that era, to ride multiple different things each weekend, which I honestly believed helped us develop to where we were come when it was time to get serious.
Because it's so many different skill sets.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, once I finished school, and I literally jumped in my van when I was 16 years old, and you know, it was like we lived 10 hours. We were still in Queensland, but Brisbane was like more of the Mecca, and we lived 10 hours north of that. So I needed to be in Brisbane. So it was a factor of, all right, see Mum and Dad, I'm going to go live with my friend Andrew and his family in Brisbane, so that I could be 10 hours or 8-hour drive from Sydney and you know, Adelaide and other places like that, so I could do the circuit essentially. So
basically trying to get closer to the scene.
yeah, I was just trying to get closer to the scene. So at 16, I left home. You know, just got my license, jumped in my van, and took my clothes and moved down to Brisbane.
Yeah. So it's funny, you know, you and I have been friends for a while, and we get to tie in some of these memories and stuff. And one of the things that we just got done doing, where people could see on our Instagrams, and we'll put some more pictures up of it too. But so at this time, when you're talking about that, we had this build going on, a 1998 CR125. Ayden actually got to ride it at Croom the other day too. But we were
Central.
we were talking about that bike. And 1998, how old are you in 98?
In 98, I would have been 18.
So in 98, you took that bike, the Honda CR125, and won your first Australian championship?
Yeah, so when I was obviously 16, when I turned 16 in June, I left home, and then I moved down with Andrew. And the next year, 97, his brother actually worked he was like he did like a bunch of stuff with a company in Queensland, like their rep type thing, you know. So he had kind of got me some Suzuki's lined up, and I got some, you know, my first lot of free bikes essentially, and some gear and parts, and I did the circuit in '97. Got second in both Supercross and Motocross that year, and then after that year, then I signed with Factory Honda for 1998, and then that was that '98 CR125 was what I won my first Australian Motocross Championship on.
Yeah. Now we have that bike here in the Legends room. That's the one that we race in the pre-modern class in the FTR. And Ayden, you got to ride that thing the other day. When you go back to that technology, how'd that feel?
Oh man, definitely different for sure. I mean, I was like fifth gear tapped out, and I was going like 40 mile per hour. I thought I was gonna blow her up, but no, it was fun. It was a fun bike to ride.
Yeah, I know, Byrne, you talked about how slow that thing was.
Yeah, it wasn't the fastest production bike at the time, but
obviously you made it work to get a Supercross championship.
Yeah, I mean, a motocross championship. Yeah, I was at that time I had a lot of good people working on that team. So those guys are still around today, actually working for the factory Yamaha team, the CDR team in Australia, which is, you know, probably the most dominant team, I would say, in Australia. So a lot of that crew when I was there, they were with Factory Honda at that time. So I had a lot of good people around me, a lot of good influences. Yeah, we made it work.
Yeah, so 98, you won the Motocross Australian Championship.
Yep.
99, didn't you win it again?
No, 99, I moved up to the 250 class at that point.
Okay.
And I won the Australian Supercross Masters Championship, which was more like arena cross style races, I would say. The Australian Supercross Championship at that point was only literally 2 or 3 races, but the arena cross, or the Supercross Masters series, was like an 8-race series. So I was fortunate enough to win that series my first year moving up from the 125. So yeah, I was fortunate enough to get that title that year.
And that was on a Honda also?
Yeah, on a Honda, yeah.
So that puts you through 99 at that point. So what's the plan going into 2000?
The plan in 2000 was, at the end of 99, actually, just racing some of those races. It was funny because, you know, there was always an American that would come to do, you know, some of these one-off races, whether it be the big race in Sydney or Melbourne, you know, Mike, you know, all the way back to like Eddie Warren, then Mike Jones, and then Phil Lawrence. And actually it was Phil Lawrence who used to come over and do some races in 99, and we just became really good friends. And at the end of 99, you know, he's like, oh man, you should just come over to California and have a little vacation, you know, get a bike and we'll go ride and have some fun. And I was like, yeah, why not? You know, so at the end of 99, I came over, stayed with Phil for a month. You know, then we were going to Paris and Glen Helen and Star West at the time. And I got to meet, like, it was crazy because I got to meet all my idols, right? You know, you're out there riding with Jeremy McGrath, you know, because him and Phil were buddies, and then him and Jeff were buddies, and then so then you're riding with Fro and Rhino and all these guys, you know. And I remember it was at Paris. I went there, and you know, I just got a stock bike from Honda for the trip while I was there, and we were out there riding, and I was riding around with Fro, and then we came back, and Fro's like, man, you need to be here. And I was like, well, that'd be cool and all, but I don't have any offers to be here. So, you know, then we just started, Fro and I started becoming close and talking. And, he's like, man, don't sign anything, because I still had 1 more year left on my Honda contract for 2000 back in Australia. So he's like, don't sign anything, you know, past your contract, because, you know, I think I'm going to start a team, and, you know, I think I can get you over here. So that was really the goal after that type of conversation, was just, all right, go home. I think that year I finished second in the Supercross Championship to Chad. I finished second in the Motocross Championship to Andrew. But I won the 4-stroke championship which was a big deal for Honda at the time. They just released the XR650 at the time, which was definitely a beast. Yeah. So Chad was riding a Yamaha 426. Maybe it was Rinaldi 450 kit in it. Like, I wasn't expected to win on this big beast, but we managed to get
manhandled that thing around.
Yeah, we managed to get it done. That thing had some serious horsepower, that's for sure. So
Sorry, I missed something. You're riding an XR650 on a motocross track, or
no, this was at the time the 4-stroke class was they called it the Australian Thump and Natch Championship. It was more of like grass tracks. So they would take a big pasture and they would put the banners around it, and then it would start at the start of the first practice. It'd be just straight grass, So that was some good times back then. But it was crazy, just like I said before. Like, we would leave for a month. We'd pack up our van and we'd be driving to the race, and the team would put your 650, your arena cross bike, and then your motocross bike all in the same trucks. You'd go for 4 weeks, and then one weekend you're riding on an arena cross track in the Melbourne Tennis Centre, which is on the main court where the Australian Open is, and the next weekend you're riding an XR650 on this huge grass track doing like 100 miles an hour. So, and then the following weekend then you're riding a regular motocross track. So,
That's so different from today.
yeah, it was crazy, but I honestly believe that helped.
Yeah.
Just make us adapt. Just make us more prepared for anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's multiple different styles of riding, obviously multiple different bikes. I mean, right now, the bikes have to be almost exactly the same between a practice bike and what you race on Saturday. And, every little thing on them is identical. I mean, because you got to be all the feel. And you're talking about riding 3 different bikes on 3 different style tracks in one weekend. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, it was definitely nuts for sure. But like I said, I feel like that helped us adapt, and it really helped us progress.
So in that 2000, let's talk about January 8th of 2000. Anaheim won on a Honda in the 125 West. Mm-hmm. You get a 14th, your very first American Supercross race.
Yep.
What was that like? I mean, had you ridden a full-size Supercross track before?
Not to that extent. That was pretty crazy because I'd actually Phil had been talking for me with some teams, and at that time it was Plano Honda, who they were like a Honda support team.
Yeah, I think Paul Curry was on them.
Yep. So I was talking to them because our series didn't start till I think March. So it was an opportunity for me to come and really just try an American Supercross. So I'd talk to them, and they're like, yeah, come over, we'll give you a bike, and we'll support you for the weekend and all that kind of good stuff. And then I get on the plane, I land in LAX, and I get a phone call, oh, hey man, we can't support you anymore. The owner doesn't want to do it. And I was just like, oh man, I literally just got here, right?
Yeah.
So, and then Phil was like, oh, screw that, So Phil, it was like a movie, right? Phil's like, oh man, I got a buddy in the high desert. He's got a CR 125, and we can get some parts from this guy and some parts from that guy. And I'm just like, wow, this is not what I was expecting to come to. Or
very first race.
Yeah, this is not how I wanted it to go. So. I get there, Phil gets that bike from his buddy from the high desert. We get it. The tires are bald. There's just parts broken, everything. And I'm just like, man, this is what I'm going to ride. Like, there's no knobbies on the center of the tire because the guy's been riding around on the street, So then we call Mitch Payton, tell Mitch what the situation was. And then Mitch was like, nah, screw those guys. I'll help you. So then I literally, from like Monday to Thursday that week, we got the bike, and I took the bike into Pro Circuit, and literally every single day worked on that bike all week long by myself to get it ready. And it was funny because Mitch was like, I don't like that those guys did that to you, so I'm going to give you one of their engines. so then Mitch gave me one of their spec engines, one of their pipes. So essentially Mitch helped me, backdoored all their team stuff. But obviously I had to sit there all week in the pro circuit shop, build it, and then go to the race. I think I actually came together with Chris Gosler in the main event and fell at some point. But yeah, talk about deer in the headlights. I wasn't, with all that stuff going on, my focus wasn't where it needed to be. You watch the movies, where you're watching a baseball movie and the pitcher is like everything fades away and, it's just you and the batter, but that ain't real life. I feel like when you're on, you see everything. And then, for that whole event, for me, I was like tunnel vision, and I was like, I was not ready.
Yeah.
So.
But was that your first time on a full-size Supercross track?
Yeah. The first time on an American Supercross track, yeah. So to still qualify and get a 14th with a crash, ultimately it was like, all right, I got my feet wet type thing. So, but it was just crazy how it all unraveled to get to that point.
So you do that Anaheim 1 in Supercross. That's the only Supercross you do in 2000.
Yep.
Then you go back to Australia?
Yeah, then I went back to Australia, raced the series. That's where I got, like I said, I got second in the Supercross, Australian Supercross Championship to Chad, second Australian Motocross Championship to Andrew. Then I won the four-stroke championship. And then at the end of that year, Fro had started his team, so then Fro was like, oh man, you should come over and, we're sponsored by The Edge, so it's not really a manufacturer thing. So, you could still ride your Honda and, come and do Binghamton and Steel City. We'll get your bike ready and whatnot. So,
Broome Tioga.
Yeah, Broome Tioga. So
August 27th, 2000, you come back to the U.S.
Yep.
And you do the Broome Tioga on a 250.
Yep.
Not a 125.
Yeah, 250.
And then you do Steel City on a 250.
Yeah.
So you do those two on Hondas.
Yes. And that was crazy too because, they'd kind of supplied some stuff for me and Broome Tioga didn't really go that well. The bike wasn't where I wanted it to be or needed it to be. So I think that next week between the races, I sent the suspension to Mitch at Pro Circuit and then he, because they were using a different company at the time for suspension, but Fro was like, man, it doesn't really matter at this point, like whatever you're comfortable with. So then I sent my suspension to Mitch, didn't even ride that week. Then he sent it back. And obviously I was a lot better at Steel City.
Yeah, you got 11th.
Yeah.
11th overall at Steel City. So your second ever, American motocross race, you get an 11th. So you're one spot out of a top 10. So then transition so that wraps up the American series.
Yep.
for 2000. Then 2001, at that point, you go American series full time.
Yeah, because after those two races, then Fro was like, hey, we're going to have a spot for you. So don't sign anything. So I literally went home from Steel City and packed a gear bag and a clothes bag and was home for like a month or so. And then I jumped up back on the plane and came back.
And that was pretty much here in U.S. for a long time after that.
Yeah, I've been here ever since. So that was, Fro's like, oh, we're going to be riding Cowies next year. So yeah, I went home, got my gear bag and clothes bag, and then I flew back and
came back to California.
So
this is towards the end of 2000.
Yeah, at the end of 2000. Yep.
The year of 2000, because you're at this point you're getting ready on a Kawasaki, a new brand, to go into the 2001 series, which everybody knows in the motocross world that starts at the very beginning of the year.
Yep.
So January 6, 2001, you do your first race on the Cowie.
Yeah, first race for Amig's edgesports.com at the time.
And you do it on a 250.
Yeah, it was a weird transition because I came when I was essentially 20 years old, so, and I'd been riding a 250, I hadn't ridden a 125 since 98. So I did a lot of 250 two-stroke stuff at that time. So Fred was like, hey, starting this team, it's a 250 team.
A little bit different though than the normal, I would say, the American upbringing right now, where everybody goes into the lights class first and then into the 250. I mean, you essentially did one race in a 125, and that's it.
Yeah, that was it. At that time, that was it. Yes, because I mean, it wasn't that's what I really wanted, but that was the option, and I was comfortable with that because I'd already been riding a 250.
Yeah.
So I was used to that size bike, and
Yeah, so let's come to America and just jump into the full big boy class.
yeah, it was. Hey, you got to take what opportunities you can get.
Yeah. So what'd you think about the Cowie compared to the Honda?
It was definitely different at that time. Like I did my whole pro career essentially on a Honda in Australia for Honda Australia. So to come back and jump on a Cowie at that point was definitely different. At a privateer team too, so we weren't getting any factory equipment at that point. It was definitely a little bit of a struggle to adapt at first. I think I had to go to the LCQ at the first race because I think I jumped onto the tabletop and essentially looped it out in the semifinal. So I went to the LCQ, obviously won that, and then I was good. Then from that point on, then it was, it was what I wanted to do. So, it didn't really matter what color it was. This is where I wanted to be, and I wasn't going to try and blunder that opportunity.
Yeah, so I'm going to pause right there now. We're talking about the Cowie in the 2001 year. So we're going to come back to that. But speaking of switching to Cowies, Ayden, our 250 Pro Sport, Open Pro Sport guy, has just switched to Cowie. So been on a steel frame bike, whether it was Husky or KTM, for probably the past 4 or 5 years, I think we talked about. And then just recently we got some support with Team Green, and we're going to end up switching over to Cowie here. So now you've been on the Cowie for maybe a month and got to race 2 Gold Cups so far. They canceled the one for this weekend due to the hurricane. But what's your take on the modern day Cowie?
The Cowie's different. The chassis is way different compared to the KTM. As soon as I jumped on a Cowie, I liked it right away. I felt a difference between the Cowie and the KTM. I mean, don't get me wrong. You can win on the KTM and you can win on the Cowie. But I've been on the KTM for about 4 years, and it's totally different. Like, as soon as I jumped on that Cowie, the chassis was so different. I fell in love with it because it was like I've been on the same thing for years.
Yeah.
But no, I like the Cowie a lot.
Just more of the feel, going to an aluminum frame, the handling, the way the ergonomics of like foot peg to bar ratio. I mean,
I think a lot of the time the cockpit, it suits a certain guy for a certain riding style.
Absolutely. I mean, and Byrne, with your career of being at factory teams and going through, I want to talk about some of those, and one of the questions I have coming up in the future is going to be talking about some of the differences in the bikes. But so Ayden gets to jump on the Cowie, and we're going to go back here. We're talking about Cowie right now. That's modern day. Growing up, though, you rode a Cowie too.
Yeah, Cowie 85s and Cowie 65s. They were fun. I mean, back in the day, I was just a little kid just racing, local Dade City. But
did you race anywhere outside of Dade City, or was it pretty much just dominantly Dade City at that time?
Pretty much Dade City.
Yeah. So then you kind of go 50, 65, 85, and at the 85 level, things start to pick up for you.
Yeah. Whenever I hopped on KTM's 85s, I actually raced Loretta's in 2018.
Okay.
My first year was on a Super Mini.
Yep.
I was like 160 pounds showing up to Loretta's, Every moto there was bad. I crashed. I went in the pond. I got a black eye. It was all bad.
Struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean that's a big race for you there. I mean, when you race locally and you stay inside, like you're talking about Byrne with the state series and the local city series, even with Dade City, that's a specific one track that runs multiple nights throughout the year. And then you have like the Florida Winter Ams and the Florida Gold Cups, which is a state series. You really hadn't gone outside the state at that point, right?
No, really, we just stayed local. I mean, that's really what we could, afford back then.
Yep.
And then you started helping me out and back in like 2019. We did a lot more races back there.
Yeah. So I mean, a huge help. You had
Yeah.
your Uncle Donnie helping you. I mean, basically kept you going the whole time. So I mean, a big thank you to him for getting you to that point. And then you switch over from KTM to Husky onto the 125, onto the big bike. You guys start traveling around to some of the more national level series and tracks. So that's got to be a change, you know, when you're used to racing one place all the time.
Oh yeah, I mean that's definitely a different level. I mean when you go to racing the same kids every weekend, the same two to three kids every weekend to kids like you never saw before, and you're like you line up on a gate and it's different. You know what I mean? They're all fast, not just two of them. They were all fast.
Well, and that's probably where some of the crashes at Loretta's happens. Like, you know, even Byrne, you're talking about coming together with Gosselin, your very first Supercross race. I mean, a lot of that has to come down to nerves.
Yeah, no, it definitely comes down to nerves, and you don't really know who you're racing, you know. So, I think as you grow as a rider, especially at a high level, you start to learn your competition more. And it was crazy because I ended up coming together with Goose, but then like 2 years later, then he's my teammate, you know. So
yeah,
it's crazy how it all works.
Yeah. So and even Ayden, at that point, you guys are doing like Freestone, Spring-A-Ding, Daytona, the RCH race there, and the amateurs. You got Loretta's going on. You got the Minios going on. So you're hitting a little bit more of the national levels. Is there any one of those tracks specifically that you like more than the others, or not really?
Freestone is probably one of my favorites, even though my status, I mean my overall
results,
my results wasn't the best there, but I like that track just because like the weather's always nice and it's always like deep and ruddy compared to Spring-A-Ding. I don't like Spring-A-Ding. That's my personal intake. Spring-A-Ding, I did so bad there for some reason.
Yeah.
But you know, even though Spring-A-Ding wasn't as rough as Freestone, I got arm pump at Spring-A-Ding. You know what I mean? Freestone I didn't, but Spring-A-Ding I got arm pump, but Freestone I didn't.
Yeah.
But no, I like Freestone a lot.
No, that's good. I'm going to talk about some of that stuff going on and then talk about some of our future stuff coming back. But I'm going to jump back over to Byrne here on now that we're talking about the Cowies. You run that 2001 season on Cowie.
Yep.
Multiple top 10s that year. Is there any race specifically in that 01 season that stands out, whether it be like St. Louis, 8th place in St. Louis, 9th at Minneapolis, 9th at Pontiac, 9th at Irving, 8th at Vegas?
I think at that point of the year, it was kind of crazy because, you know, right when I started doing better, I started obviously understanding the situation more and my competitors more and just being more prepared every weekend.
It seemed like looking at the results from that season, the more the season went on, the better you got.
Yeah, no, obviously every week's a learning curve. So you're just trying to take in as much information as you can and
get used to the race days.
Yeah, process it and then work on your weak points during the week and try and be better. It was crazy though because at that point of the season, you know, Fro had came to me and it's like, hey, the title sponsor ain't paying anymore. So the team's going to be done after this season. You know, they're already not paying. And that was after, which one you say was before Dallas?
Pontiac.
So after Pontiac, that week, Fro was like, hey, the sponsor's not paying anymore. The team's done.
At the end of Supercross.
Yeah, at the end of Supercross. But Fro was like, hey, I made you a promise that, you know, we were going to get through this season as far as Supercross goes. So I'm going to pay. And I think the whole team folded, other than myself and the mechanic and Fro. So we jumped in a van and drove to Dallas out of a van.
Yeah.
And did the rest of the series out of a van because the team was folded. But, you know, Fro was a man of his word, and he said, hey, we're going to get it done. And
you got to respect that.
Yeah, so that was cool. And, you know, at that point, too, I knew that, you know, I needed to be better anyway. You know, I need to do good because if this team ain't going to be around, I don't want to be getting on the next plane going home. So
So what happens then at the end of, you know, Vegas is the last race.
Yep.
That's May 5th of 2001.
Yep.
So you're on the Cowie with Fro at that point. He sticks behind his word, and you get through the season. Then after that, it's like, all right, boys, shop's closed.
Yeah, shop's closed. So I got on a plane, flew back to Australia. I think that very first or second week that I was back, I called Honda again in Australia. Kind of put together like my own. They did like a support team for me off the side of the truck. Went to Appen, won the national there. Finished out the season with essentially my own team in Australia, and then obviously wasn't in any championship hunt because I was coming back midway through the season or at the end of the season. So
Yeah.
But fortunately enough, I got home, did that, and was just trying to organize my ride for the following year with Honda. And then Ziggy from Geico had called me and said, "Hey, we want you to come back. We want you to ride 125 Supercross." So I was like, "Okay, let's do it." So then I jump on the plane, and then I flew back to America, and then I had a 2-year deal with Factory Connection.
Well, didn't you do one outdoor in 01? Steel City?
I think I came at the end again.
Yep.
Yes,
That was one of the last rounds. September 2nd of 01 on the 125, you do Steel City on a Honda. That was the only outdoor you did that year.
Yep.
And then 2002.
Yeah, and that was just on my own, I believe.
Okay. And then 2002, you're on the Honda now.
Yep.
It says online on the 250.
Yeah, well, I was riding East Coast, so I did
The 250.
I did 250 West.
Yeah, so Anaheim won January 5th, 2002. First top 5 in America, you get a 4th
Yeah.
on a 250.
Yeah, it was. I mean, obviously, I felt really good. Obviously, I was on a more of a high-level team. My preparation was really good as far as, they'd call me in like August or September and was like, "Hey, come back, we want you to sign you." So, I came back and had a really good off-season prep with the team. Got all that stuff sorted, and they were all about me riding a 250 on the West, considering I'd already done it. So it wasn't like wasn't anything new for me to ride 250. So,
But still, to come out in that first one of the 2002 year and get a 4th, I mean, that has to stand out.
yeah, no, that was pretty cool. I want to say like that was the first race, and then a couple of races later, maybe Anaheim 3, I think I whole shot and I led for 10 or 11 laps. Ended up 4th again. So I was feeling really good at that point. Really confident about stepping back to the 125 for the East Coast Championship.
Did you do the whole East Coast series? Because it only shows that you did 2.
Yeah, no,
Indy on the 125 East.
Yep. And that result would have been bad because
20th.
Yep. So I came to the first race, didn't get the best of starts. I worked my way up into 3rd, and then the bike shut off on the face of the triple, and had to jump off. Had a big crash. Broken ribs, lung, ankle, back. So
that takes you out of
essentially I was pretty much done for the whole series at that point.
Yeah, but you came back at the very end to do just the Las Vegas East-West shootout.
I think that was the following year, right?
No, that was May 4th, 2002. It says on a Honda, and it says you got 7th.
Oh yeah, it may have been right. And then,
Right when you come back from injury.
Yeah, so I came back, did the shootout, but I still think I may have missed. I had to, when I jumped off on that triple, I'd had surgery on my ankle, and then I did that race, and something didn't feel right, so I had to have another procedure done. So my 2002 motocross season was not that great.
Basically just coming through a recovery.
Yeah, just recovering.
Riding your way back in.
Yep.
Yeah, so you go through the 2002 season, couple top 10s there, sit right outside the top 5 at Broome Tioga in that year with a 6, finish it up at Steel City with a 7th. Again, kind of the same thing as 01. You kind of get better as the season goes on because you're basically riding your way back into shape after coming off of 2 surgeries.
Yeah, exactly.
So 2002, then you stayed with Honda for the 2003 because that was a 2-year deal.
Yeah, I had a
so you
2-year deal.
02, 03, you're with Honda. So then you go in 03 and pretty much do the same thing, 250 in the West.
Yep.
And 125 in the East.
Yeah, and that obviously just one more year with the team, just one more year of comfort, good off season.
Yeah, and that
I think I was up front at the first race, but then I think that was the year that LaRocco and Pastrana, they crashed on the Dragon back, and then I slammed into them at the first race and pretty much tacoed my front wheel, so I DNF'd the first race. But a couple of races in, I think right before I was moving to East Coast, I think I had 2 fourths in a row.
You did. You had the Anaheim 3 was a fourth, and San Diego was a fourth, and then you actually had your first 125 East race of that year, and you get your first podium of your career.
Yeah, no, that was
Minneapolis.
that was crazy because I was in a first-time pileup at Minneapolis in 03. So, and I felt like, that should have been my year to win an East Coast Supercross championship. I was in the first-time pileup, got up from that, came all the way back to third. The next weekend in Atlanta, I won the heat race easily. First lap of the main event, got jumped on and taken out, got up from that, dead last, came back to 5th, I think.
Yep.
And then that following week, during practice, we'd had a lot of rain in California. They'd just built some big whoops at the Honda track, and I remember Travis Preston and I were just kind of practicing, and they were really soft, and we were just trying to work on jumping through them. And then the bike kind of just stuck in one when I went to jump, and I just kind of snagged my thumb on the handlebar and broke my thumb, or put a crack in my thumb, and then I was out for the rest of the season until the East-West shootout. And I came back at the shootout. Wasn't quite 100%, but I felt pretty strong as far as my grip strength goes, and I think I got third that race. So
Yep.
yeah, it was crazy because all those years of riding, I didn't really do that many 125 races as far as Supercross goes, but I think maybe 4 or 5 races, and I had 2 or 3 podiums out of those 5 races. So
Yep.
but then at that point, I'd done so well in the 250 stuff leading up to it that that Cowie was interested. So I had before that season even ended, before the shootout, I already had an offer from Factory Cowie to move up to 250 and just kind of be Factory 250.
Well, let's finish out the 03. Even the outdoors, you're still on the Honda in 03 for the outdoors, and you get your highest finish there was a second at the Moto 338.
Yeah, that was a crazy day. I mean, like I said, I wasn't quite ready at Vegas for that race, and then kind of just had to build on it again. But I won the first moto at Southwick that year. There's very few races that when even after a 10-year career, that you can be like, man, everything was clicking that day, and you'll count on one hand. You've done 100 or 200 races in your career, but you can count on one hand the days that you were actually really like on it or focused, like where everything was clicking. So that was one of those days. I was never that great in the sand. I grew up in Queensland, which was clay. So it was pretty crazy. Now I look back on it, I had a lot of really, really cool, good results at Southwick, and I was definitely not a sand guy at all. So
Yeah.
I won that first moto comfortably by like 20 plus seconds. Unfortunately enough for everybody in the field, James was still out at that point, so that helped the situation.
Yeah.
But then second moto, didn't get the great start. Was coming through the Craig Anderson, the other fellow Australian who was over here at that point. I was kind of sandwiched between him and Brock Sellers, both on 250Fs. So I was trying to make a move on Craig, and then I was getting attacked by Brock from behind. So it was, trying to juggle that, and then I thought I had the pass made with like 2 or 3 laps to go. Made the pass. Craig passed me back. Next lap, made the pass. Then thought I had it closed down, and then actually Craig and I came together in the turn, and I actually went down. So got back up. I think I got third or fourth that moto, got second overall, but that was definitely one that that got away from me.
Yeah.
I definitely felt like I had the speed to win that day for sure. But you know, that's racing. That's the way it goes.
Well, and then you go on that series too to go to Washougal, and you get your second podium there of that season with a third at Washougal.
Yeah, that was another crazy day. I don't think my first moto result was that great. It was like a 7th or something, and then second moto, you know, I got second. And then at that point with James out there, that was like a win, you know. So
Yeah.
if you got second, you're like, yeah, I won today, because you know James was crazy fast at that point. So yeah, ended up with another podium there, which was great.
So that wraps up 03. That also wraps up the time with Honda.
Yep.
And you already had, before the outdoor season even started, you already had your deal done to go to Cowie.
Yeah, I had my deal done at Salt Lake City that year, so second last race to move up.
So you switch over in 04 and you go factory Cowie.
Yep.
So this is the first time you're on a factory level team.
Yep.
So you ride, what was that? Was that a 2-year deal or a 3-year deal? Or
It was a 2-year deal. I ended up doing 2 years on the two-stroke, and then at the end of my deal, they re-signed me again to help develop the new 450.
Okay, so in 04, you go into that on the Cowie. So basically, first time racing the factory Cowie, Anaheim 1, you get a top 5.
Yep.
You had multiple top 5s that season, 4th, 5th, you had 6th at Daytona. You go through, I mean, basically all the way through, you know, Irving, Salt Lake City, top 10s everywhere throughout that. Anything that stands out in that 04 season?
That was a big learning curve just that year, just actually moving to a factory team. I mean, I obviously did a lot of testing and had a lot of knowledge from Ziggy and Factory Connection at that point, but, you know, that was a different level of development. Just a lot of long days at the test track, just learning, trying to develop something new, and just, you know, having people trying to build something just for you, which was pretty crazy. But it was a cool experience. I learned a lot from my years at Cowie.
You think that kind of helped you become a better rider as far as bike setup and how to communicate with the team and tell them what the bike's doing?
Yeah, because at that point, you know, they had James. He was really young. So they were using me for a lot of development. So I really spent a lot of days with Skip Norfolk, you know, who was Jeremy's mechanic for a lot of years. So Skip and Jeremy definitely did a lot of testing and a lot of he had a lot of knowledge. So I learned a lot from that and was able to just try and take it all in and you know, try and develop the bike as best I could. But it was tough too, because obviously at that point everyone knew the 4-stroke was coming, but you know, you still were developing the 2-stroke, you know, every week
To try and make it better for the next race.
Yep.
And that's one thing that we struggle with too. And even Ayden, you know, trying to have, you know, we had really good support last year from AEO. They actually flew out from California and came to the 83 compound where Ayden rides and trains at, and was able to do testing. But one of the things for Ayden, being as young as he is, and Ayden, you can kind of allude to this yourself, but it's hard to get info out of Ayden, you know. I mean, for so long, it's just kind of been one of those things where he does what you were talking about, where you would just get on a bike and you ride it.
Yep.
And that's, you know, Ayden, for you growing up, that's a lot of what it was, you know, get on the bike and ride it. And, you know, right now we're trying to test different things, and it's hard to get that knowledge like you're talking about here at Factory Cowie in 04, basically developing your personal craft to try and make the bike better for you.
Yeah, and obviously you gotta, I mean, obviously I had so many options, right? You know, like they're throwing 20 things at me in one day, you know, and you're just kind of like going through it all. Obviously in Ayden's situation right now, he's not in that situation as far as having that many options and that much stuff, because he's not a full factory rider. So I think that's going to come with time. And obviously I feel like the bikes have obviously changed a lot over the years. You know, you would do half a day just on jetting, and like now all that kind of stuff is out the window.
Yeah,
you got fuel injection, so you're good on that side of things. So
yeah, now you play with mapping.
yeah, you got different maps and stuff, but no, I think that'll come in time. He's still, obviously still really young, and that's just kind of something that you learn as you go.
Well, one thing that I thought that was interesting about that 04 year, you do 250 Supercross, but then for outdoors, didn't you go on the 250 4-stroke?
No.
You didn't?
No, 252 stroke all year.
Okay. I thought it said that you had gone to the 250 4-stroke in 04.
No, it probably says 250 because I was like one of the lonely 2-strokes out there, 250s.
So you go through the 04 season, basically, learning the team, getting the feel with all the testing in the Cowie. 05, and you said 06, you stayed with Cowie.
Yeah, I was with Cowie in 06 also.
So Anaheim 305, you get a podium, third place there. That's still on the 2-stroke in 05. And then you go, even the outdoor that year, multiple top 5s, 4th at Broome Tioga, 5th at Glen Helen.
Yeah, that was crazy that year because I was, like I said, I was the lone 2-stroke out there at that point. But I had a pretty good bonus in my contract if I an automatic resign if I got top 5 in that series, and I think I ended up 6th because at Glen Helen I lost my rear brake in the last motor of the season, and then I think Ernesto or somebody actually crushed it that day and ended up bumping me in points. So that was kind of crazy.
But they ended up signing you anyway.
They re-signed me anyway.
Even though you were one spot out of that contract clause.
Yeah, I just didn't get the money.
But then you've got to do this whole transition now at this point in 05 going from the 2-stroke, because didn't 06, wasn't that your first year going on to the 4-stroke because you were testing and developing that bike?
Yeah, that was our first year. I want to say the first time we rode the bike was we had gone to Colorado in the preseason to test the 2-strokes there, because obviously we knew that James and I were like one of the last 2-strokes left, so Cowie wanted to go there and try and make the bike as good as possible, because obviously they knew it would be behind the 8 ball at that particular event with the elevation. So we'd gone there, and then they had a pre-production 450 in the truck, and then after we had done a couple of days of testing, and they pulled it out right at the end and let James and I take a spin on it, which was good and bad, to be honest, because obviously you're excited to ride it and you're like, oh, this thing's cool, and then like within 2 laps you were 3 seconds a lap faster, and you're like, god damn, this is going to be a long national because we're not allowed to ride this thing.
Yeah.
How much exposure had you had to the modern 4-stroke at that point?
At that point, none. But I was obviously...
Besides the 650.
Yeah, but obviously I'd been wanting and pushing for the 4-stroke for over a year before that. But the bike wasn't ready at that time. I was like, man, let me ride it. I want to make that change, because obviously I'd won that 4-stroke championship in Australia, and I really liked riding the 4-strokes. So, but at that point the bike wasn't ready, so it just made for a long summer.
So you did the 250 through 05.
Yep.
Indoor and out.
Yep.
And then 06 Supercross, you switched to the 450?
Yeah, so the first race that we did on the bike was actually US Open.
Okay.
At the end of the season. So that was where, obviously, as soon as the last motocross race was over, we were straight into development and riding the new bike, the new 450 on Supercross. So James had the option, and he at that point chose not to. But he had the option. My contract was solely just for the 450. So my job was to help develop the new bike, and I was going to be the one that ride it in Supercross. So we went to the first race at US Open. I got second to Ricky at that event, which
On the 450?
on the 450, which was, definitely a standout, in my career that I can remember. Like, it was, I was actually in the battle, racing Ricky in the heat races, passing each other, and actually in it for the first time, with someone like Ricky. So it was pretty cool.
That was U.S. Open?
Yeah, U.S. Open 05.
Okay. Yeah, I know what first place gets. It's like $100K, right?
Yeah, it was 100K.
What's second get?
35.
Okay, cool.
There we go. And then you go into the 2006 Supercross on that bike.
Yeah, so then obviously after that event, everything went really well. Everyone was happy. Obviously, the development kept going. Right before the season started, we were actually, at that point, we were using factory KYB, and at that point, the two strokes had used a 16 millimeter shaft on the shock, and then we were out testing one day, and the bike just didn't seem right in the rear, so they pulled the shock apart, and then they noticed that the 16 millimeter shafts were starting to bend at that at that situation and at that point. So then they moved us to the 18 millimeter shaft, which I honestly did not enjoy at all, and didn't really like the feel, especially in the whoops. But we kind of really didn't have a choice, right? The 450 was bigger, heavier, more powerful, so we couldn't really take that risk of.
You almost had to beef it up.
Yeah, you had to beef it up, but at that point, we found it so late before the season, that it was, kind of chasing our tails a little bit on that. But they got it figured out in the end.
But you still go through that 2006 on a brand new bike, right? And your really first time on racing in America on a four-stroke, because you've been two-stroke pretty much the entire time. So you go into the 06 season, again, multiple top fives. I mean, you got the fourth in San Francisco, fifth at Anaheim. You've got a third in Daytona, a podium on this 450. I'm sure Cowie had to be happy about that, getting the bike on the box.
Yeah, no, it was good. And then obviously the bike they made it pretty good. I mean, it was for a first year, the bike was really, really good. It was solid. It was definitely competitive with everything else out there that all the other companies that had theirs for multiple years at that point. So Cowie definitely hit the nail on the head as far as this bike was ready to race. So I kind of went through some of my own situations that year. I feel like I should have been better. But I had some Epstein-Barr, and I was overtraining, and there was a whole bunch of other stuff happening. Like back then you're trying to beat Ricky and all these guys and Chad and everybody, and you think of more on the training side, and what I really needed was less. So I was dealing with a lot of my own personal issues as far as the training and physical aspects on that thing, because in qualifying I could I'd be on the board every time, and then sometimes in the main events I would just be flat, and I didn't have anything left to give. So that year was, it was a solid year as far as results go, but I feel like it definitely could have been better. But I was obviously dealing with some Epstein-Barr and stuff like that.
Well, plus being on a heavier bike too. I mean, going from the two-stroke to the four-stroke.
Yeah, and it was just like that old mentality, like more is better, like more laps, more motors, more training, more gym, that's going to make you win. But ultimately, when you get to the race and you can only give 70% of what you're capable of, and you come off the track and you're dead and you're not even sweating, so it's like there was definitely some issues there, because I felt like I needed to do X, Y, and Z because these other guys are doing that, but ultimately I was overtraining and not being able to give 100% on the weekends because I just didn't have it.
Yeah.
How long did it take for you to figure that out?
It was that whole year, really.
So then you go into the outdoors, still on the 450 for outdoors. What did you think about the bike as far as, on an MX setup?
No, it was great. It was like, all this horsepower, compared to being on the two-stroke the year before. So, it felt good and comfortable. Obviously, the bike was getting better, each week. There was a lot of money, a lot of development going on at that point. They were making changes to start getting data and stuff like that too. Ultimately, that didn't come until right at the end, and then I ended up leaving after that. So
Yeah, I was going to say that outdoor year, you had your 7th at Thunder Valley, then you get the 5th at Steel City, 6th at Glen Helen, couple results in there, like a 31st at Broome Tioga. I'm sure something happened at that.
yeah, at Broome Tioga that year, I there was like a downhill double, and I was trying to pass somebody, and they kind of got cross-rutted, and we hit it in the midair, and I landed and hit my head, so I was kind of out for the day.
Yeah. So you say at the end of the 06, you've now 3 years. You had the 2-year with the third-year option on the 450. Your 3 years at Cowie wraps up. Then you end up getting the offer from who?
I got an offer from Rockstar Suzuki. That was their first year. It was Rockstar Suzuki. It was like a support team at that time. It wasn't the actual factory team. It was the first year for Rockstar Energy as far as going to like an in-house factory-supported Yoshimura team,
Okay.
Suzuki.
What do you think about that transition from Cowie to Suzuki?
It was a little rough as far as, you know, you go to test the bike for the first day, and you literally, they bring you out a stock bike with a pipe on it, you know, and you're like, I've just been at Factory Cowie for 3 years, so this wasn't what I was expecting, you know. So that was a tough year, just because of the parts availability and not so much the staff as far as, you know, like they weren't good. It was just what we had.
Well, still a pretty solid start to the 07 year, though, on the Suzuki. I mean, you get the 6th at Phoenix, 5th at Anaheim 2, 5th at Anaheim 3, 6 Houston, 6 San Diego. That's a pretty good start to the season.
Yeah, no, it was good. Well, like I said, I think at that point I was figuring out myself. So even though my equipment wasn't as good, I felt like maybe I was a little better. So it was just that learning curve and that little flip-flop and understanding what was going on.
So you go through 07 on the first year, and this is basically a support Suzuki team at the moment.
Yep.
You know, so then at the end of 07, you still stay on Suzuki for 08, but did the team change?
The Rockstar sponsorship then went to the factory team, Factory Makita Suzuki. So then they took me with them. They wanted me to make that transition with them to the factory team.
So you go from basically a supported Suzuki team in 07 to the factory Suzuki team in 08.
Yes.
What big difference as far as bikes and parts availability?
Oh yeah, huge difference. You know, like we were just, you know, we were using in-house Yoshimura engines in 07 and RG3 kit suspension, you know, to full factory Shaw and full factory Suzuki.
Now,
engines.
did you miss the 08 Supercross season?
I did. I was getting ready, and then I was like December of 07. We were getting a lot of rain in California at that time. I drove up to the high desert to go ride with my teammate at the time, which was Alessi and Villeman. So I went up there to ride, and I got there, and then they were kind of doing like a race schedule. And I wasn't really that familiar with the dirt and stuff, but then we kind of just like jumped into it. And there was like a triple into a corner that was really tight into the berm. And I landed and just kind of washed the front, and then the handlebar trapped my leg, and I popped my ACL. So that was the end of.
Off to surgery?
Yep, that was the end of surgery the very next day, and
Supercross season's done.
Supercross season finished.
So didn't even attempt to come back to a Supercross because you're going through the surgery, the recovery, and then at that point it's like, let's focus on returning for outdoors?
There wasn't even like a focus of let's focus on outdoors. It was like, hey, are we even going to make it back for outdours at that point? Because it was, you know, like I said, it was
ACLs are pretty big.
It was December, and then we spent like, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks on the bike. But obviously, you say 3 or 4 weeks, but the first week I rode 2 times, you know, because it was sore and it was weak, and we just kind of, we knew it was healed. So then we went to Glen Helen and was like, well, let's see what just another year of, all right, let's see what we can build, you know.
So technically, your first year at Factory Suzuki, You miss the Supercross season due to
Yep.
the ACL, and you show up for the first outdoor.
Yep.
So that's your first time racing the factory Suzuki.
Yep.
Was the first outdoor of the '08 season.
Yes.
So in that one, you go into Glen Helen, you get a 6.
Yeah, 6 that year. Yes, off ACL.
Yeah. So I mean, are you happy with that going into that
Oh
one?
yeah, I was pumped because I knew that I wasn't
100%.
100%. I mean, obviously it was healed, but I knew I wasn't really where I could be yet.
Well, a little bit of a common theme here, though. You get better as that season goes on. So that
Well, unfortunately, that's probably most of the time because I'm coming off an injury. So you can only hope that you get better because you get stronger, right?
yeah. So that beginning of that '08 outdoors, I mean, multiple top 10s. There you go, 6, 8 at Hangtown, 6 at Freestone, 10 at High Point. But then things really start clicking off there.
Yeah,
Fifth.
I think we had a break after that. We had that little run of races, and then we had like a week or 2 off. So then it was like, all right, we're getting better. Let's regroup.
Yeah. So then you come back from that break and you go 5th at Thunder Valley, 3rd at Redbud, 5th at Budds Creek, 2nd at Unadilla, 3rd at Washougal, 3rd at Spring Creek. I mean, just starting
Yeah.
to ramble.
Rattling off podiums.
Yeah, just starting to rattle off podiums there towards the end of that '08 season. I mean, that had to feel pretty good.
Yeah, no, that felt great, because at that point, with the knee and everything too, I was, got the Epstein Barr and all that kind of stuff under control, and it was kind of like what I wished I would have been able to do with that '06 season, as far as have my body back where it needed to be, and then have great support. I actually had that.
Yeah, to have both of them together, the body and the bike.
Yeah, to have both together, and that was a good feeling to give 100% every weekend and feel strong.
So you go through, I mean, it's unfortunately, but you come back through racing your way back in through that
Yep.
outdoor season there in '08, but you end up 4th overall in the
Yep.
series. So a top 5 finish there. At that time, do the contracts have any top
I had a 2-year deal at that point, so
any season result bonuses in that? Like
No.
to get top 5s or anything?
no, it was a 2-year deal. So I wasn't definitely not racing for a ride at that point. It was just a matter of like, hey, let's get back healthy and get going.
So then you roll into '09, still with factory Suzuki.
Yep.
And how did that off season there?
Off season, same thing again, right? Off season was going really good, and then I was practicing at the house in Georgia and doing some motos, and track was kind of getting rutted and beat up, and I just kept pushing it harder and harder and harder, and then I ended up, there was a rock in one of the whoops, and I hit the rock and it kicked the bike sideways right before I had a triple right after the whoops, and then I just I fell into the triple, and I put my hand out and then broke my navicular. So then that was just like, man, it was a lot of frustration at that point.
Yeah. You missed the start of the Supercross season.
Yeah, to have your body and have a great bike and good team around you, and then to miss 2 Supercross seasons just from injury. The one in '08, that was just a riding crash, and I was just unfortunate to get my knee stuck. But the one before the '09 season, it was like, you're feeling good and it's getting crunch time. So you start pushing the envelope every day to try and get that little extra out of it when you probably didn't really need to.
Yeah.
And then ultimately it bites you, and then all of a sudden, then you're out, So I don't think I raced again until San Diego.
Yeah, you did San Diego, Indianapolis, and Daytona, those 3 that year.
Would you say you were still overtraining back then?
No, at that point, I had everything under control as far as, obviously each year you get older too, so you're learning your body more, you understand the training and the fitness side of things, and especially after that '08 season at the end of motocross, I definitely knew what my body needed, and if I was getting tired, how that felt, and when to pull back and when to push, and as far as the training goes. But yeah, I came back at San Diego. It was okay. I qualified out of the heat. I'm not sure what I got in the main.
8th.
Okay, so yeah, 8th in the main. I remember my wrist wasn't quite that strong at that point, but it was healed and good enough to try and start building again. And
Then come the following race, Indianapolis, 8th again.
yeah, Indy 8th again. And I do remember too, like after Indy, it was like, I don't know if we had a week off. I think we had a week off after Indy.
Yeah, there was a week between Indy and Daytona.
Yeah, so there was a week off there, and I was like, all right, like at Indy, my wrist was still sore, but it was not even as close to as sore as what it was at, at San Diego. So it was like, all right, now we're going to get on top of it here. Everything went good in the heat race, I think, at Daytona, and then on the start in the main event, I had the whole shot coming into the first turn, and then that was the year that James was behind me and he hit the front brake and he literally washed out and then hit my back wheel, sent me flying. I got run over by, I think, Millsaps or somebody, and then and dislocated my shoulder in that first turn crash. So it was like, just it's like, all right, we're going to get back on track here, and then all of a sudden, bam, over again. So dislocated my shoulder out the back, had to have surgery. That was the end of that Supercross season, which was a bummer, obviously, because I felt like when I was at my best and strongest, those 2 Supercross seasons was the ones I missed. So
Yeah.
at that point, it was, oh man, are we even going to make motocross?
Yeah.
And it honestly wasn't looking that great. I think I went to the first race at Glen Helen, and I think I got maybe 18th, was it?
12th.
Oh, I got 12th. Maybe I qualified 18th. My shoulder was sore. It probably wasn't really ready. But I was like, I'm not going to miss another series at this point. I'm just going to take my time and we'll build on it.
Yeah, so again, same thing here. Coming back from injury, starting the season on the outdoors in 09, basically racing your way in. Results at the beginning of the series, not great, but then they start clicking,
Yep.
And then you come in 4th at High Point, 5th at Thunder Valley, you get a 3rd at Spring Creek, a 3rd at Unadilla, a 2nd at 338. I mean, again, podiums again. I believe you finished that series in 4th that year also.
Yeah, no, both those years were 4th. Like you said, ultimately, I feel like if I would have came in healthy, they should have been top 3 seasons. But that's just racing, you know. So definitely got to finish both those series strong. And then unfortunately at the end of that series, my contract was up. But then that was when also the economy kind of crashed. Yeah. So then Suzuki was pulling back on a lot of stuff. So didn't get re-signed at that point. So leading into 10, I'd still had obviously a good relationship with Cowie. They were like, "Hey man, if you want to do your own thing, we'll support you." So I kind of did that at the end of 2009, and yeah, I did 2 races in 2010 on my own.
On a Cowie.
On a Cowie, yeah.
Yep, you
I
did.
think I
Anaheim and Phoenix.
Yeah, and I think I actually crashed out at Phoenix, but that same weekend, Josh Grant blew out his ACL, and then JGR actually called me that week and was like, "Hey, I know you got your own thing going on, but we really need a guy. So would you be interested?" And I was like, "Sure, let's do it." So
then you switched to Yamaha.
Then I switched to Yamaha midweek.
First time ever being on a Yamaha at that point?
Yes, first time.
So you go on a JGR Yamaha midweek and then show up to Anaheim 2 in top 10.
Yeah. That was definitely a struggle too, because obviously a new bike.
New team.
But obviously, you go from your own thing to a full team again. So, you go to having a lot of good people around you, a lot of smart people, a lot of, to be able to
things are getting taken care of instead of you having to figure it all out.
Yeah, exactly. So that side of things was awesome. Obviously the new bike and just everything new within a week was pretty crazy, but no, we adapted okay. I think it was tough though, even for the team at that point, because that bike was new to them also. So that made the transition a little tough for everybody. But yeah, we did okay that season. I should have had a podium at Salt Lake in the mud, in the snow. But I landed the triple. and then somehow like a rock got into the brake line and busted the brake line off. So then I had to ride the last 4 or 5 laps with no rear brake at all, and I think I ended up 4th or 5th or maybe something like that.
Yeah. So you go through 2010, essentially filling in. Unfortunate JG gets hurt, but you take his ride at JGR, so you go through the entire Supercross season in 10 on a Yamaha.
Yeah.
So Supercross is done. Last round there was Vegas. Then outdoors start, and you switch again.
Yeah, then obviously JG was going to be back, so then I was going to do my own thing again, and then the Valley Yamaha team offered me a spot for motocross.
Didn't you actually did Hangtown though on a Suzuki, didn't you?
No, only Yamaha.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
The way they have it on here is Hangtown on a Suzuki and then Freestone on a Yamaha.
No, I was Yamaha that whole season. It was funny because I always joke with Frankie, who's one of the head technicians at KTM now, but he was my mechanic at that time, and it was our first race together. And
For the Valley team?
For the Valley team, and Hangtown is predominantly the first qualifying session is always the fastest. So it's like you get the green flag and you gotta send it while the track's smooth and good. And I literally go to get the green flag, and then I got smoke and stuff coming out of off the engine, because the oil cap had came off, so then oil was splashing out, so I didn't get to do a lap in the first qualifier. So we come back to the truck, and obviously I'm pissed, and then he's pissed, and then we go back out for the second one. And then we're going the first couple laps, and then he's telling me on the pit board, "Hey, you're not in. Like, you're not top 40, or not top 36." And I'm mad, right? Because I'm just like, track's not there yet, So I'm like, but then I actually did a couple laps, and then I was about to do like my last lap, and he still put out on the pit board, "You're not in." So then I did the last lap, and it was like, all right, man, this is going to be a Hail Mary here. Like, Hail Mary did it, and I think I came back. I think I ended up 6th in that qualifying session, and I came back to the truck, and I was like, didn't make it. And then he's like, "Oh, no, you made it. I was just telling you weren't in so you could go faster." And I was like, "You son of a bitch."
That was dirty.
I about killed myself 10 times out there on that lap. So that was crazy.
So the 2010 outdoors you do with Valley.
Yeah, that was.
So at least you're still on the same bike as Supercross.
Same bike, but not the same equipment and crew and everything like that. It was that was definitely a struggle for sure.
Yeah. So do you get through 2010, you wrap up on Yamaha, and then you switch to who in 11?
11 was when I switched to BTO.
On the Suzuki.
On the Suzukis, yeah.
So you go through basically 1 year off of the Suzuki with the Yamaha, and then now you're back to Suzuki.
Yeah, I'm back on the Suzuki, but obviously
way different from the factory.
Full-blown privateer status, like they're using local guys for the engine and suspension, and oh man, that was a long year. And then Forrest and I got into a lot of arguments and a lot of fights that year because he was just like, "Oh man, you're just old and slow," and I was just I was like, "Man, that's not it, like you don't understand how important what you're sitting on matters at this level," because he'd never been there at that point at that level. So that was definitely a struggle. We got into a lot of arguments that year, and it wasn't a great year at all.
Do you think it was just the 11 bike?
No, not at all. It was just Forrest thought that if you got some guy to do your suspension and then a guy to do your engine, that the bike was good. It's you're only as good as the people around you.
Yeah.
Which
it's tough though to compare it against factory stuff. There's not many riders that have the opportunity to be on 2 different factory teams. So
yeah.
You've got the experience of factory Kawa, you've got the experience of factory Suzuki, and trying to compare anything to that level is nearly impossible.
Yeah, it wasn't a good transition, that's for sure. So yeah, because he didn't really understand at that point. He just thought if you had a kit suspension or in a mod motor that you were good, and that's all you needed. And no, that's definitely not the case. But like I said, we got into a lot of arguments that year, and then at the end of that season, I was just like, man, call somebody, call Mitch, like call JGR, like call somebody, and let's get like a package where we can go and test and develop and and actually work on stuff, and at the end of that season he did a deal with JGR, so then we got our own suspension guy, and they were doing our engines and stuff for 12.
So 12, did you do Supercross in 12?
12 I did not, because in 11, at the end of 11, I was getting ready for the season, and I was going through the whoops. I was actually here in Florida at Chad's, and the rear hub busted and rear wheel locked up, and I actually broke my neck in my nose at that point, and I didn't even realize at that point, because obviously I knew it was a big hit, so I thought I broke my nose, so I went to the hospital and they did some scans and stuff, and then the doctors kept coming in like every 10 minutes and like touching my neck and my back and be like, oh, is this hurt? And I was like, no, like, let me get out of here, like I just came from my nose, and then lo and behold, I ended up, I had two broken vertebrae, the spinous process on the side of the vertebrae in my neck, so I ended up in a halo for the next 3 months.
So you missed Supercross of 12.
Yes.
And you guys were still on Suzuki, still on the VTO.
Yep.
But you make it back for outdoors.
Yeah, and I think at that point, once I got recovered from that, then we started testing and stuff like that, like 4 weeks before the first race.
I feel like there's a pattern here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously, like when I work with, these guys now and all these other riders that I've had, throughout the years since I've retired, it's, you learn so much from your own career and what to do and what not to do. So that was definitely one of those things where you learn the hard way for me. But now I try and take that in and give that information to the riders so that they don't have to live what I had to live.
Yeah, I mean, some of it sounds like it was definitely bad luck, but I'm sure you've thought in retrospect what maybe you could have done different or tried to prevent on some of those injuries and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly sometimes, you've got to take every day for what it is. You take what the track gives you that day, you take what your body gives you that day, instead of trying to force the issue. If you've got a couple of heat races and 20 lap main events that you want to do and you're not feeling it, then it's okay to, obviously you get done what you can, but you don't take it to that limit to where you make that error or that mistake like what I did, and then you end up out. You can always live to fight another day, but that was definitely a hard lesson that I had to learn throughout my career. I think it's one of those things that you want it so bad, so that mentally you think, oh, if I don't get this done, I'm not gonna get achieve what I want to achieve. But ultimately, if you put yourself in that situation where you're just shot, but then you're still trying to get motos done, then ultimately you're not even there tomorrow. You're there for the next series. So I always try and work on more quality over quantity now, and just I'm okay with my guys leaving after they've obviously done their work. They're not shortcutting anything, but it's okay to leave wanting more, because you can actually come tomorrow and give more instead of just going so far to that you end up on the ground or you end up broken.
Well, I'm going to talk about that. We're going to get into some of the training stuff a little bit, because I want to finish this up. We talk about that 2012 year you missed Supercross, you come back for outdoors, but I would say Unadilla 2012.
Yep.
You're leading the race.
Yep.
Correct. Put your leg out in is it a right-hander?
Actually, it was going into the back section. It was muddy that day and the track was super rutted. I came out of the turn and there was some rollers, and I'd got on the balls of my feet or on my toes to like go through the rollers, and the turn before it was muddy, and I feel like I just must have had some mud or something on my boot or on my peg, and I went to slam like the second or third roller, and my leg slipped off the peg, and it went right into the next roller with my leg straight. So like instead of it folding under like it does, I mean, shit, your foot probably come off in those conditions maybe 4 or 5 times throughout a moto, but unfortunately for me, that one time I hit it
Straight on.
I hit it straight on to where my leg didn't fold backwards. It actually was straight, and then my femur came down and just literally like a sledgehammer and just shattered my
Drove it
tibia.
right into the ground.
Yeah, just drove it into the ground and just splintered out my. It was like broken in 6 places, like my,
But
my
talk
tibia.
about the high and the low of that day. I mean, you're leading the race.
Yeah, that was crazy. I whole shot. James passed me on the first lap, and then I was still second. And then 2 laps later, James crashed. So then I was leading again, and then I was in a battle with Weimer. He passed me for a split second, like literally 2 corners, and then he flew over the bars and got a concussion. And then after that, I was literally in no man's land, like plus 10, plus 15 seconds for the whole moto. So I think I had maybe 3 laps to go. And, Dunge or whatever got a bad start. Tickle was in second. And it was one of those days, like I said, that first race I came to, you were like tunnel vision, but like that particular moto at that time, it was like you've seen everything, like your vision was wide, like so I just felt like everything, I was comfortable. Even when my foot slipped off, I didn't feel like at any point like I was on the edge or anything. It was just like super comfortable, super lax, and just your foot slipped off. And I mean, my foot had slipped off the peg maybe 2 or 3 times during that moto already, but your leg just kind of flicks up and you just keep on going. So, but unfortunately on that one, it stuck. And at that time, I didn't even crash. I just literally rode through the rollers. I thought I blew out my knee at that point, because obviously I just had a lot of instant pain. I just rode to the edge of the track and literally hopped off my bike and sat down on the ground and was like, something's not right,
Yeah. So, I mean, you go from leading the race to sitting on the edge of the track. I mean, I can't even imagine what's going through your head right there.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say. Like, you go from...
I'm about to win this race.
Yeah, well, you're not even like thinking about winning. You're just like, I'm going to execute this and that, and you're trying to just reel off the laps, and then to go from that and then knowing that you were, 10 plus seconds ahead with only a couple laps to go, to literally sitting on the side of the track holding your leg.
That's in pieces.
Yeah, you're just like, you're kind of looking up, just going, why?
Yeah. How does
why?
this keep happening?
If I remember correctly, have you watched that race back? Was Fro announcing?
I think Fro was announcing back then.
I think I remember he sounded so gutted when he saw that, and then of course your backstory. Now that makes sense as to why.
Yeah, no, that was crazy. Even just going back into the medic thing, and at first they took my knee brace off, and then they could see the bone pushing into the skin, and they're like, "Oh, you didn't blow out your knee. It looks like you broke your leg." And at that point, I was just like,
It's a lot bigger than you thought.
no, I was kind of thankful, right? Because you think of a knee like, oh man, that's 4 or 6 months, no matter what.
Okay.
And you think, oh, broken bone, a couple of screws, whatever. Maybe that's only a 2-month thing, So I'm like, oh, maybe it's going to be okay, Obviously, it sucks at the situation, but at that point, you're thinking, oh, this might not be as bad as what I thought. And then once you get to the hospital, and they're like, oh man, this thing's in like 6 pieces. And then there was so many pieces as far as trying to get it back together. They did the best they could, but then when it started healing, like halfway down my tibia, because they didn't do the alignment right, then when it started healing, my leg actually was bending out midway down my tibia like 10%. So and that's how it healed. So I'd kind of gone through the whole off season, or the whole rest of that season, like trying to heal it to get it ready for for Supercross, but my leg muscle wasn't growing. Like everything was not developing, and then my leg was bent, and they were telling me, oh no, that once you get your leg bigger, that'll, everything will realign and whatnot. And then, yeah, it never did. So I had to have another surgery to try and get some movement back in it because the tibia plateau was so damaged. Just trying to get everything to function right, So that was, two more surgeries throughout Supercross in 13. So I missed 13 again in Supercross, just trying to get my leg better. And at that point, Forrest had just signed that new deal with KTM to get factory support, because Forrest and I talked, and he's like, hey, I got this offer, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, man, do whatever you can to get factory support. Like if they're going to give you engines, whatever, you take them and you use them. Don't try and do your own thing. Like this will be better for you and for us and for the team. But then ultimately I never really got to use that because, I tried to race in 13.
For outdoors. And, my leg was still bent 10 degrees. So I had to have a special little insert put on the brake lever because my leg was bent so far. Like the regular one, I couldn't use it. So then I had to have a longer tip on the brake lever to try and use the brake lever. And because my leg wasn't aligned, like my knee would just blow up. It was a nightmare. Like I would come to the race, I would race, and I'd pretty much leave on crutches, and then maybe ride once that next week if I could, and then go to the race, and it was just a nightmare.
How were you wearing motocross boots or knee braces at the time, or were you just not? Everything was modified.
The knee brace, I had to get a new knee brace. So the boots were obviously regular, but yeah, I had to have a different knee brace made, and that was pretty much the end of it, to be honest, because I'd gone through so much heartache, so much pain each weekend.
Well, and that's,
wanting it to be better, but it just never was.
There's for a stretch right there's almost a pretty major injury or surgery for a while.
Yeah, I had, from when I broke it to even the start of the motocross season, I had 3 surgeries on it to try and get it better. And then I literally tried to race that motocross season, and it was horrendous. I was pretty much riding around on one leg. I shouldn't even have been out there. It was a waste of time. So, but I was trying to, support the team, try and do the best I could. But ultimately, I'd got to a couple rounds left in the series, and I went to some different doctors, and I did like a full leg and full leg scan, full leg X-ray, showed the different, showed all the angles and everything like that. And then we definitely seen that my leg was bending out 10 degrees. So then I did the last race at Elsinore, I think it was that year. And then the very next day, so I raced Elsinore, left on crutches, went into surgery on Monday, still on crutches because my knee was blown up from the weekend. And then
What race was Elsinore?
that was the last round of 2013
Yep.
motocross.
Yep. August 24th, 2013.
Oh wow, I don't even remember that round.
Yeah, so it was hot.
18th.
Yeah, it wasn't good. None of that year was good. It wasn't good for my stats, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But
at that point though, like towards the end of 13, were you just like this?
yeah, I was at that point. I was just like, why am I out here? I'm wasting my time. It's not what I'd trained for before. It's not what I was capable of.
So at some point you have to make a decision.
Yeah, and I like I said, I'd seen that doctor before the season had ended, and I'd scheduled surgery, and they were pretty much going to take all the hardware out that I'd had in there from the original break at Unadilla. They cut a 10-degree wedge out of my tibia so that they could move it over to straighten it out. And then when I woke up from that surgery, then it was honestly crazy because I woke up from that surgery thinking that I was going to be in a lot of pain, and I actually woke up in less pain than what I went in with. And the doctor was like, hey, we kind of fixed it as best we could. It's not great by any means. It's not normal.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's up to you now. You've got to make a decision whether or not you're going to keep racing or not. But if this doesn't work, then there ain't any other options after this. So it was like, if you want to have kids and run around with your kids and have a normal life, then this will be fine for that. But if you're going to go race and put it under stress and whatnot,
You could probably damage it further.
yeah, it's not going to be a good situation because you're out of options at this point. So that was pretty much the end of it. There was.
Now, didn't you do the one lone race in 14 on a Cowie?
Yeah, I did do. I came back.
Unadilla, right?
Yeah, I came back to do one race at Unadilla because
What was the reason for that?
because after 13, like after I got my leg fixed and it was back, getting back to normal, and the muscle regrew, and I was doing a lot of training, and I actually was working with Chad for Chad's team, so I was kind of still riding during the weeks and stuff in 14, just as a riding partner for him and doing the training and stuff with him, just more of a motivator so that he could keep pushing and stuff. So my leg actually felt pretty good at that point. And then Chad was like, man, why don't you race Unadilla, just try and tick that box and, put that one behind you, so.
Got some unfinished business.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I knew I wasn't going there to finish off the business that I had in 2012 at that point, but it was just going to be there.
So you did that on a 2.2 Cowie?
Yeah, I did that on a 2.2 Cowie. First moto, I think I was up front, maybe like 10th or 12th or something, and I tipped over with Chiz actually, and went way back. Then I think I came back to like 18th or something by the end of the moto. Second moto, I started in top 10. Literally the first lap, the head pipe came off. So then I went like 2 more laps after that, and then they were just like, pull it in at that point. Like I wasn't out there for anything other than just like,
what does it matter?
To go back and just to have some fun. So that was kind of like the end of that. So could have been a fun day, but it didn't go to plan either.
Yeah. So that's the last professional race for the 2.6 Byrne is August 9th, 2014.
Yep.
So I mean, you've got a pretty long career there, 2 factory teams, 252 total races.
Yep.
And in those 252, in the top 10, 144 times.
Yep.
So you think about, you were in the top 10 over 50% of the races you entered.
Yeah, like I said, that 2013 season didn't help my stats at all.
Yeah, but still, 37 top 5s and 13 podiums. I mean, There's not many people out there right now that can say they've even made a main. There's not many people out there that can say that they were in a top 10 once, and you did it in over 50% of the races you were in. Then you have the top 5s and even the podiums. I mean, to podium at the highest level of the sport had to be fairly rewarding at some of those moments.
Yeah, no, it definitely was. And I was okay, like, when the doctor said, hey, you're either this is your options, I was actually, at that point, I was okay with it because I didn't really, I mean, obviously I didn't achieve what the ultimate goal was, to win races and win a championship, but I ticked a lot of the other boxes, heat races, moto win, podiums, all that kind of stuff. But I just knew that every time I was out there, as long as I gave it everything I had at that point, then I knew when it was over, then I was okay with that, So I never like half-assed it.
Yeah.
So it was always, that was everything I had, and if that was a podium, that was great. If it was a 10th, that is what it is. I could live with that, So
yeah.
That's really the important thing too. Like what I try and tell these guys too. Like Ayden is like, if you give it everything you got and you come back, no matter what the result is, obviously his career is a long time from being over, but you can live with that.
Yeah.
You know, if you,
As long as you gave it 100%.
yeah, if you gave it 100%.
Unacceptable to give it 80%.
Yeah, well, if I would have gave it 70, 80% for, all these years, and then I get to the end, then you're like, I probably could have done better, but that's, you've got to live with that for the rest of your life after you're done racing.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about the after you're done racing thing coming up here in just a second. I want to bounce over to Ayden here because we haven't heard a whole lot from him. He's kind of the quiet bear in the room right now. But we talked about you coming up through the big bikes, going through the KTM on Super Minis, Husky on 125s, and then going back to KTM into 250s, and now transitioning over to Cowie. This past year, we formed this Future MX team, where we're trying to evolve this team as a legitimate amateur premier team in the pit area. I know we've talked about it on some of our previous episodes. It looks like next week we're actually going to fly out to Iowa and pick up the semi that we purchased and be bringing it back next weekend, so that way we can start working on getting it built out with the way that we want to do it on the interior. And then, it's going to take time to get the wrap and the awnings. I mean, none of that stuff happens overnight. If we can have all that done by Minios, we'll take it there. If not, we'll probably still take the truck there. I just don't know if it'll be 100% ready at that point, just because, one of my goals with this radio show and the YouTube channel we're wanting to start, we want to document the trip of flying out, getting the truck, bringing it back from Iowa to Florida. And that's to show people what a team, some of the inner workings of this goes through. And, Byrne, you mentioned when you were doing your own thing on Cowie, I mean, you are your flight planner. You are the guy that's making sure you have the parts you need, that you have spare tires, that you have the gear. When you have a team doing it for you, we're handling all of that. So not a lot of people get to see that side, I mean, just going to get this semi truck next week. And one of the reasons why we want to document it, it's not, okay, somebody go out there, get the truck and bring it back to Florida. It's not that simple. I mean, we have to nail down who's going, flights for those crews, manage what time that flight arrives, transportation from the airport to where the truck is, paperwork, inspections on the truck, DOT prep, making sure the truck's ready to do a 20-hour road trip. And then obviously we have to make the drive successfully from Iowa back to Florida. There's fuel, there's labor costs, there's tolls we have to go through, there's DOTs, there's permits, there's trip permits and fuel permits. I mean, there's so many things that people don't see. So we're going to try and document some of that too. But within this past year, we've started this thing off, basically from the ground level as a team. We've got some sponsors involved and guys that are really just interested in helping people like Ayden and Carson Wood, which are two guys right now at the moment. And, this past year, one of the coolest experiences I've had, and Ayden, I want you to talk about some of your favorite moments of the year, but the Supercross Futures thing, was that a standout moment for you throughout the year?
Oh, yeah. That's like the funnest I had on racing a dirt bike, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
All those fans and just seeing, like, everyone, like, even at, like, Atlanta.
Right.
We're, like, we get to park with everyone else, Like,
yeah. We're in the paddock with all the pros.
Yeah, it was fun. Like, just showing up and just seeing everyone there, like all the fans. It's definitely like a game changer.
Well, you started out getting ready for this. We're working with Byrne at the compound, 83 compound, and we had to do our very first qualifier was at WW. So we essentially jumped on Supercross just for a couple weeks. And when that was really your first time on a full-on professional maintained Supercross track. I mean, you're riding the same track that Cooper was.
Yeah, it was definitely a bit sketchy, a few moments, but but I was lucky to have Byrne there. Byrne definitely was like, oh man, you know what I mean? But it was fun. I mean, the first 2 weeks I definitely probably almost killed myself every single day. But
I mean, for your first time jumping on a Supercross track, though, some of that has to be expected.
Oh yeah, definitely. My heart rate was probably 220 every single day. But we just got better. And even though it was such a short period of time, it was still fun. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Traveling to Salt Lake and Atlanta, those races were fun.
Well, and when we go through the process there, they kind of did it almost similar to how Loretta's does theirs. You have an area qualifier, then you have a regional qualifier, then you have the championship, just like Loretta's does. But in Supercross Futures, the area qualifier was at WW in Jacksonville. We went up there. We had Austin Kent, which is Cooper's at-home mechanic. We had Dalton Keevan, which is now McElrath's mechanic.
Christian Craigs.
Oh, Christian Craig. That's right. Christian Craig's mechanic. And then we had Big B, myself, Donnie, crews, sponsors, multiple different people go. And we get all the way to Jacksonville. We've been training now in Supercross for a couple weeks, you know, riding your heart out, Byrne's working on techniques. And we get there, and it's a complete mutter. And they ended up switching it from the Supercross track to the outdoor track. So that was a bit of a bummer. We were looking forward to doing that one, the Supercross.
Yeah, we went there. The track was muddy, but I actually had fun on it for the 2 laps I had.
Yeah.
You know, it was a bit sketchy.
They basically said, go out here.
God threw you a bone and said, we're probably not quite ready for this, but
Yeah.
let's do the motocross and we'll get in and we're good when we got time to work on it.
Yeah.
Were you scrambling on setup and stuff? I mean, didn't you bring Supercross suspension? And
We had Supercross suspension on the bike that we had built out for us. It was A-kit Supercross stuff, but we brought the outdoor kit in our suspension kit. We brought it in the Sprinter with us.
Smart move.
Yeah, it ended up paying off very well because, you know, we didn't know that they were going to get that much rain. And when we got there, they were really kind of set on still trying to ride the Supercross track. So they sent all these guys out there, you know, to ride the Supercross track, which was, you know, muddy and slippery. And it's like they kind of brought all of the, you know, parents and team owners together in a little meeting. And my comment was, you've got guys that aren't experienced on Supercross as much as they should be. And now you have a course that is dangerous, you know, because it's slick. You know, you could get sideways in the bottom. I mean, Byrne was just talking about getting his bike stuck between whoops. I mean, because it's that muddy, why should we put these kids that don't have necessarily the Supercross skill set to be out here doing? I mean, there was absolutely people out there that did not have Supercross suspension that were racing a Supercross track, and it was a full-size Supercross track. It was not a tamed down, you know, little backyard Supercross track. It was a full-size normal Supercross track, and there was guys out there riding it on their everyday bike, you know, which was outdoor suspension. And it made sense after talking to everybody to think about it, and it's like, you know, let's scrap this idea. Someone could get hurt. Let's put it over to the outdoor track, which was much drier because it's a sandier, you know, base, and end up running it on the outdoor track, qualified out of WW. Then the regional race is Atlanta Supercross. So that one we were lucky enough because our Sprinter was having an issue, so we borrowed Cooper's box truck, put the bikes in the back of the box truck, and Ayden and Tyler Bright go up in the box truck. Myself and Donnie rode up in a car, and then 2 of our other team guys came in their vehicle. And again, we get there day one, and it's pouring down rain. I think we went up either Thursday night because we had stuff to do at the track on Friday. So we went up Thursday afternoon. And I mean, it was pouring rain when we arrived.
And you're not at the Dome this year, right?
No, it was at the Speedway. Mm-hmm. You know, so it's almost like a bit of a Daytona, but Atlanta has more red clay. So it was a clay outdoor style Supercross track, if that makes sense. You know, I mean, anybody that's been to Daytona or has seen the Atlanta race on TV. So it was really slick, you know, because of that rain. Remember getting there, and I mean, the whole parking lot was like underwater.
Well, I mean, it didn't rain until Saturday morning.
Friday morning.
Friday
Didn't
morning.
you have to do press day or something?
We did press day, but the track was good. It didn't rain.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so everyone was all like crazy about the big triple.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, I hope they take it out because I'm not trying to hit it.
Did they take it out? That was the one Bogle was talking about last episode.
Yeah,
Yep.
Bogle, it's the one that claimed a few guys. Hunter went down on it. You know, Bogle came up short, but that, I mean, it was huge. It was just a monster. And the thing with that jump was that it was right out of a turn.
Yeah, I mean,
You came across the start straight and made it right.
You went under the bridge,
Yeah.
and you turned right.
And then it was like right there, and it was a booter.
yeah, my buddy Chance Hymas, dude, I remember it was the first practice. It was I was watching him. I was second practice, second lap. The first lap was all wheels on the ground.
Yeah.
Second lap, hits it. Right, I'm like, oh my god, dude, and everyone's going crazy. I'm like, all right, well, I have to hit it now. And then so next practice comes around, like 3 laps come around. I'm like, oh man, I don't want to hit it. But then out of nowhere, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna hit it. I didn't even think about it. I think it was like second gear. I'm wide open, just
Yeah.
clear.
And you did a little arm pump, fist pump.
Arm pump, brake tap, make sure that was good, and just fist pumping it. You know.
Yeah, everybody on the sideline. Because, I mean, honestly, in the Supercross Futures, I think there was only maybe 4-5 people out of all the guys, 20 guys or whatever. I think there was only 4 or 5 that hit it.
Yeah, I love giving Hunter crap about it because I mean it's my first time on a on a Supercross track. I hit it the first time and clear it, and you hit it, and then case it and crash, and to make it like a big scene. It was funny, but no.
But get through Atlanta. The rain comes, the track gets slick. They did take out. There was two booters there. The triple was huge, and then they had that big double right after the whoops that had the Connex.
Yeah, that
had the
jump
Connex
over
box.
the.
Yeah, you shook the whole Connex box when you framed that one.
Dude, RJ was like, you were like, just get through this practice. Don't do nothing stupid. I'm like, all right. So there was these big old whoops right before this big old double, and Chance and this other kid was hitting it. Chance was going through the whoops perfect, hitting a double like it was nothing. I'm like, you know what, dude, I want to hit it. But I wasn't hitting the whoops. I was doubling them. So the very last 2 set of whoops, I doubled it, and as soon as I got on the flat, I gave her all I got. And dude, I freaking seat bounced it and came up so short.
Framed it.
I'm framed. I'm like, boom.
Framed in metal tunnel.
Dude, I hit my head so hard on the bars.
Yeah, his helmet bounces off the bar back.
I'm over it.
Just like you bust your chin.
Everyone's going like, oh, I'm over like freaking cross-eyed. I'm like, dude, it was definitely a crazy time.
Byrne, where do you rank Ayden's Supercross skills this early, like compared to some other people you've seen?
Oh, the at this time that we're talking about, it was.
Yeah, at this point,
it wasn't ideal. We weren't hitting the same spot any lap that we came around. The first 2 weeks we were short, we were long, we were casing the next one, we were smacking our head off the bar the next one.
Well, you got to think about this, and this is something that I don't.
But
know
the progression was good.
People realize when we went to WW, we only rode Supercross for maybe 2 weeks before we go to WW. And then we come back from WW and have to get ready for Minios. So we really didn't ride any Supercross at all.
It was actually one day before WW at
Was it?
Ferry's house. One day on that Supercross.
Oh, that's right. Because we didn't have the ones built at the compound yet.
Yeah, we only did like 2 weeks before Atlanta.
Yeah.
Yes, Atlanta. That's what I'm thinking of. So we basically go to WW without any Supercross experience. We go get ready for Minios. Go race Minios. That's your first race in the Open Pro and 250 Pro at Minios that year, because going from B to A. And then we get done with Minios. We typically always take some time off. And that's, some people that don't know is usually after the major nationals, when we don't have another one planned for months, we try and take some time off. It gives everybody, him time to heal, which after Minios, he needed time to heal, hit his head multiple times there. Oh, yeah. And then, after Loretta's and after Minios and even after the spring nationals, we typically take a little bit of time off, just, a couple weeks, let the body recharge, let the team recharge. Those are some long events, long races. So we get done at Minios, take some time off, I think pretty much through the month of December. And then Atlanta was in March, was it?
Yeah.
Because we had the spring nationals.
March.
So we actually stayed outdoors for a while as far as getting ready for Daytona, Freestone, and Springading. So we did those 3 outdoor nationals. And I think it was as soon as we got back from Texas, we did 2 weeks worth of Supercross. And that was when we actually rode at the 83 Supercross. The tracks were built, at that time, because obviously they're mid-season. So you're gaining experience. And that I think there was a nice progression from day one of that to the second week. So we felt a little bit more comfortable going to Atlanta. And then we get there, and there's just these giant booters. And I'm like, this is nothing like we just practiced.
Like you just got all those races with regular jumps, and you come to the one race where you're going to do a future race, and it's got 100-foot triples.
Like, what's the track going to be like this week with the futures race? And just
cinders.
Yeah, can't even walk up the faces.
I mean, I definitely, had progression through my Supercross training. I mean, first week, I went around the whoops. Second week, I probably was jumping through them, if even that. Third week, hitting them, kind of. And then finally, at the end, right before Salt Lake, I was kind of hitting them good. Very good. Or
Yeah.
You're going across the top.
Yeah, I was going across the top. You know what I mean? Instead of.
So then we, you qualified out of Atlanta. And then we go to Salt Lake. and probably the biggest and longest whoop section I've ever seen. And that was your first time ever on a full-scale Supercross track in a stadium? Because I know you raced Tampa before on one of the amateur days, but they always tame the track down for the amateur day.
That was an actual real track in the stadium and not a speedway style track.
Oh yeah, I mean, the first, I think it was press day, right? Press day, or we didn't have a press day, did we?
Yeah.
Well, I actually hit the whoops during the press day, like 3 times. And I was like,
Don't they skip the whoops normally on press day?
Yeah.
Did you break through the barrier?
Well, it was
Depends. Sometimes
it was
like
Saturday morning,
track.
the first practice. Whenever the whoops were good, I hit them, and I hit them pretty good. I was like, all right, yes. The dirt was nice. The whoops were nice, right? But they were big, but they were nice. And then next thing you know, 30 minutes later, they're all concrete and they're just getting chewed out. I'm like, oh, heck no, dude.
Welcome to Supercross.
Yeah, we were talking about that too when Hampshire was on the episode, and he was like, yeah, I was watching Ayden in that practice, and I remember, I believe it was I think it was press day, and you came up short on that triple.
Oh, man. Dude, let me tell you. I thought I was good, you know. I felt like I hit that jump in first gear. Well, I was in second, going at it pretty fast, and the next thing you know, I'm on top of it, just framing it.
That's called elevation.
Yeah.
The elevation there was crazy.
Yeah, so the elevation of Salt Lake. But again, I mean, just the whole experience, you know, I mean, parked in the pro pits again. We had little kids coming through asking for autographs, so we took some pictures of that and put it on our social medias. And to be racing in front of all those fans in prime time at night on TV.
That's a cool experience for, these kids at this age to be able to do that.
Yeah.
I was so nervous, like, the whole day. I probably took, like, 4 dumps right before the gate dropped, like, every time.
You heard it here first.
Yeah.
Pre-practice, press day.
The nerves had his stomach going.
Dude.
And we got in a car accident.
Yep, and we got in a car accident.
On the way on Saturday. So we go through press day. Everything was fine. We had a nice dinner for Tyler's birthday that had, quite a few of us there at dinner, and, really nice meal. Go back to the hotel early, get a good night's rest, wake up, heading to the track, bam. Some guy in a Toyota pickup truck just runs right inside of us. So I'm like, okay, well, as long as we get that out of the way here, we missed track walk, but there's nothing we could do about it because we were sitting on the side of the road. But we end up getting through and, go through Salt Lake, and such a cool experience, even for me too. We were very fortunate to have the Chapmans, GE and Russ Chapman were a huge help to us by getting the bike out there. Because again, as far as the team side goes, logistically, and I know we touched on it in an episode before very briefly, but when he made it out of Atlanta, the high of we qualified, we've made it. The low is, oh man, now I got to get there. Now I got to figure all this out, So you got to go through both of those, from the team side, because obviously Atlanta to here where we are in Central Florida is a much easier drive, and you can put a bike in the back of the truck and get there pretty simple. Well, you're not really going to do that going all the way to Salt Lake City, Utah. I mean, the mileage, the drive time, it's a huge difference. So having the support of the Chapman family, they're a phenomenal family. And getting the bike out there, we end up getting flights instead of having to drive. So that's a huge time saver, as anybody knows. I mean, to me, an airplane's just a time machine. So you get through all of those, and to be at the race and go in and get your credentials and in the stadium and you're on the track. I mean, all of that, there's so much to that was very rewarding and cool. So moving on from Supercross Futures, end up going up to Loretta's this past August here, a couple months ago, and basically getting the flu at that point, throwing up. We had Byrne with us as our...
That wasn't ideal when I get off the plane for the first day, and Jay's like, man, he's at the hotel, he's sick. And I'm just like, oh.
Yeah, we got a problem. And I didn't know what to do. I'm like, so I'm calling Byrne as far as the trainer side of how to handle this. And, we ended up putting the ball in your court, letting you make that decision. But still, though, able to get through the week, and successful, week as far as being able to complete the motos and still being able to, do a tire change in the middle of a moto. I mean, we were the only team that did it after, I think their total count was 14 wheel blowouts. So getting through that one, and then now, what's the plan now? We're getting ready for Minios?
Yeah, getting ready for Minios and
adapting to the Cowie.
I kind of want to race Supercross coming up. You know, I enjoy Supercross a lot, even though I about died on it a couple times. But I've been racing motocross my whole life, and getting my feet wet in some Supercross is definitely a game changer. I mean, I really couldn't do it. Byrne, you taught me everything, like on a Supercross track. You know, like I was just like a fish out of water.
Yeah, I mean, you made some really good progress, you know, to be able to, like I said, the first time you watch him and you're literally looking through your fingers like, man, we're struggling here 3 weeks, 4 weeks later to be able to watch him do laps and to be pushing. You know, it's cool to see the progression.
Well, and I think at that point, too, we have to make a decision here after Minios, you know, because we're going to do Minios at 250A, 250 Pro Sport, in both the Supercross and Motocross side of Minios, which I understand that's an amateur level Supercross track. It's not like the Salt Lake City, you know, Futures Championship race. But at that point, you know, we have to make a decision of whether we go race another Supercross Futures season. And now that we know more about how it works, because remember, this is the first year that happened.
Yep.
We didn't know at that time that you could actually go race multiple of the regionals and areas. You know, we thought you could only race one area, and that would qualify you for one regional, and that would qualify you for the championship. It wasn't until about midway through the season that we found out that he could actually race in any of them that he wanted to.
Yeah.
So, you know, you've almost got the Supercross Futures season now, which is new. So we have to make the decision of whether we want to do the Supercross Futures, even though he did earn his pro points based on his finishes.
Is that like 6 or 7 rounds?
I think so. So, you know, we have to make that decision pretty much after Minios. I think we see how Minios goes and then make the call on, you know, essentially trying to do some professional East Coast Supercross rounds or doing one more season of the Supercross Futures and then possibly going pro at the first round of outdoors. You know, that's a decision that'll have to be made here soon, and you know, there's going to be deciding factors that go into that. But that's the plan for now. So hopefully that Cowie will be the ticket, gelling with the bike, and you enjoy that.
You need a little redemption at Minios in the Supercross. I mean, you should have been second last year and you crashed on the last lap. So
Yeah.
Need to go there and win.
Last year was definitely not the best, but this year coming up, I don't really want to put too much stress on me. But at the same time, I have that voice in the back of my head like, dude, you know you're better than this, you know what I mean? I just want to finish where I need to be. Last year, I was in second the whole race. Last lap, I decided to flip over the bars in 250 Pro Sport.
Good move.
And just blow it away. And I was so mad. And I'm like, dude, the whole race I was in second. Last lap, just choked and definitely just threw it away. But this year coming up,
well, only thing that matters there is that you learn from it.
yeah, most definitely. The Cowie, I like the Cowie, so hopefully just we can keep getting better, and then whenever Minios come up, I'm just gonna let her out.
Go for it.
Go for it.
Yeah. Well, Byrne, we had a big weekend last weekend. I want to talk about this one. Your team manager for Destinations here for Australia.
Yep.
So, you know, we talk about when you wrapped up the basically 14, you were helping Chad. You did your final race at Unadilla, and at that point you officially retire.
Yep.
And then you go into more of a trainer role. Let's kind of go through from that point up until all the way where we're at now is what you're doing now, and then the Destinations race.
So yeah, after that, I obviously worked for Chad with his team for a couple of years, and then it was at the end of 2016 that Forrest actually came back to me and was like, "Hey, I want you to work for the team, be like the assistant manager, but work with the guys." At that point, they just signed Blake and Benny Bloss, I think, and Dakota Alex, I think, were on the team. So, so then and at that point, Chad was, you know, he wasn't really sure what his plans were. So, it was a 3-year deal to, you know, to make that jump to be more of the help the riders, but also move into the manager side of things. So I took that opportunity. I was fortunate enough to be able to work with Blake a lot. With my role there, it was like if you had a trainer or somebody like that, you didn't have to work with me. obviously I was still going to work for the team and do the manager side, but you didn't have to. But Blake wanted me to do that for him. So I was training Blake pretty much with everything at that point, and still doing the team stuff. That went really well. I was.
Do you feel like that kind of like was that your passion?
Yeah, like we worked together really well too. So it was cool to be able to turn that essentially a motocross guy was his reputation into a guy that won a Supercross race in 17. So actually, I think he won. He had red plate motocross 17. Unfortunately, broke his thumb at the end. Still got top 3 in the series. And then it was 19. I think he won Phoenix second round. So that was cool. And as that went on, my role from being an assistant became more of the manager side of things, and then Forrest handled all the sponsors and financial side, and then I made sure that the team was running and did all the logistics with getting everybody to the races. And we had a good group of guys. Like you said, Austin Kent, who's Coop's practice guy now. He was one of the main mechanics. We had John Boyd Jr., who's he'd been working with KTM's for a long time. Had a lot of good knowledge, and just putting all us together, we worked good as a group. So we had a lot of success there. And at the end of that contract, I kind of decided I was doing more of the manager stuff and less working with the riders. So I feel like working with the guys and trying to get the best out of them was what my real passion was.
Yeah.
So then I kind of stepped away from the team at that point and started working with different riders and stuff like that. So, this year I've started working on starting a business, Motor Blueprint. I got to go to the Combine this year and work with a bunch of different amateur guys at the Combine, which was super fun.
Weren't you undefeated at the Combine?
No, I won 2 out of the 3.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think I got the red plate though, I think. So no, that was fun. It was cool to work with different kids. It's really hard, obviously, when you go for 2 days to really have an effect on people or on the kids' results. It's more of the guidance saying of like, hey, what you need to expect, what you need to be looking for. Sometimes they're stressing about something that they shouldn't be stressing about, and it's just like you're just trying to keep them focused and give the best advice you can with the limited time that you have. Maybe it's track knowledge for qualifying or stuff like that. So it's a really cool experience. That's a really cool program that MX Sports does for the kids. I really enjoyed that. And then obviously, like you said, Motocross the Nations. We had a pretty good week last week. It's been 11 years since Australia's been back on the podium, and 11 years ago was the first time that Australia's ever been on the podium. So to take the team and then get them back on the podium 11 years later, I think that was probably the same time as the last time US won too. So it was like you were 11 years from winning, we were 11 years from podium, and then you guys ended up winning and we got third. So crazy weekend with the weather, obviously. A little bit like 18, except it was just shitty weather for one day and not the whole weekend. So no, it was cool. I've been doing the team manager stuff for Team Australia since 2018, I believe.
Okay.
So yeah, no, I really enjoyed that side of things, and it was.
So that's the best result as manager.
Yeah, for myself, yeah.
So it's cool though. Yeah, who was all? It was Jet Hunter,
and then Mitch Evans. So all 3 guys were all essentially factory Honda riders.
That had to be nice.
Yeah, that was pretty cool to be under one truck and to be an actual complete team for a weekend, which was pretty cool, instead of everyone being separated with different manufacturers.
Yeah, no, that's neat. I enjoy that. Now let's talk a little bit about you. You hit on, you're starting a business right now, Moto Blueprint. Yep. What is Moto Blueprint? So
Moto Blueprint, it's going to be like an online training essentially a little bit like some of the other guys out there, whether it be troll training or I think MTF is doing something also similar. But, different packages for different, for whatever you need.
So basically customizable to what the rider wants.
Yeah, customizable to what you need. If you want the full program, whether that be gym, cardio, riding, or a less expensive program where it's just cardio and riding. Obviously it's all just programs. You wouldn't get any coaching out of that, but I'm also available for coaching stuff too.
So it's basically based on what the rider wants,
Yeah.
So you can build something custom and unique to them, whether it's
Yep.
a daily schedule on a calendar of what they could get. And
Yeah, so essentially you fill out a questionnaire, what level you're at, what's your goals, what kind of rider are you, do you compete, do you not, are you just looking for regular fitness, and then it just gets tailored and customized from there.
Yeah. So that's neat. So we're working on that, right? You said, you mentioned you were working on a website for it to get it coming here soon.
Yep, still working on building the website right now. So that'll be coming soon. But I mean, ultimately, really, Ayden was like one of the first Moto Blueprint riders.
Yeah. So that's neat, though. I mean, you could do something where if somebody wants day-to-day, training
Yep.
and wants you to be there, I mean, obviously there's a cost for that. And then if
Yep.
somebody wants just an online program, there's a cost for that. And you could do anything from somebody that's wanting to get into the sport all the way up to right now you've got multiple top guys.
Yep.
That are, like even Ayden or some of the other guys that you work with, that could potentially be, transferring from amateur A level to pro.
Yeah.
And then, I mean,
Yeah,
you've got-
exactly. So you're trying to build something so that you take the guessing out of it for the rider. Like a lot of these kids who are amateur leading into pro, or even if they're just staying amateur, if they're on the younger side, it's like, what how many times do they wake up and be like, oh, what are we going to do today, or what are we doing for motos, or anything like that. So essentially you're actually building blocks of training, whether it be a 4-week, 6-week, 8-week block, with a goal to, improve the fitness and not just be kind of winging it every day.
Yeah, making a plan, having a structure. I mean, that's a lot of people don't realize. You can't just go out there and pound X amount of laps, and that's the result for everybody. You know what I mean?
Because at that point you're just you're doing some laps, but there's no goal in that. So it's real easy to get lost in the motos.
Well, let's keep an eye on that, and let's stay in touch on when Moto Blueprint, the website's up, and
Yep.
let us know how people can get a hold of you and reach out to you. We can share all that info here on the podcast. We can share it on our website and also on our social media platforms. But that's really cool to have the Moto Blueprint, coming to our area, and really anybody in the country could get something like that.
Yeah. Essentially, it'll be, hopefully it'll be worldwide. If a guy in Europe wants, a training program, or,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Somebody back home in Australia.
Yeah, someone back home in Australia, they want some guidance, so they want to know what they need to be doing. So, that's the goal.
No, that'll be cool. And then Ayden, for you right now in the immediate future, you got the Gold Cups going on right here each weekend, week to week. So we're going to try and get through the rest of that series.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm definitely enjoying it. Some more local races, just to get some more races under my name. But no, I race this weekend coming up, Gatorback Sunday.
So that'll be the next one.
Oh yeah.
And then you've done Diamondback so far and Dade City.
Yep.
So took an overall win and a second place at Dade City. And then
I went 2-2 Diamondback, and then first, and then second overall at Dade City.
There you go. So we'll try and keep those podiums going for the remainder of this. But I greatly appreciate you coming over, this week. And huge thank you to everybody that helps Ayden. I mean, you've got a lot of good people. I mean, we're sitting here in the Legends room. We'll put a picture up on our Instagram, but we got some brand new fly gear that just came in this week to get ready for Mini-O's and the remainder of Gold Cup. So that's some really cool fly gear. So a huge thank you to all of our good friends at Fly for being on board with you. Then we got the Oakley goggle deal that came on board, and obviously we're switching over here to Cowie, get that bike dialed in and get it ready to go. So I mean, anybody else you want to thank?
Obviously I want to thank the whole Future MX crew, you know what I mean, for definitely helping me out
Yeah,
So,
we got a lot of good people in your corner right there trying to get that going. It's a pretty good lineup when you start thinking about Michael Byrne and Justin Pooh Sipes, and we got Heath, we got Kent going to the races with us, Big B going to the race with us, and Dolph going to the race. I mean, Bogles is over there on the side next to us at Loretta's. I mean, that's a pretty legit group to sit around and be able to be at the 83 compound with, Chance and Jet and Hunter and Drew. There's a lot of good people to be around. So hopefully we can turn that into something there for you to get it rolling. But I greatly appreciate you making the time to come up here today and talk a little bit about yourself and get this thing going. And then Burner, I mean, what a career, man. I mean, that's a long run there in the professional level, to be on 2 different factory teams and multiple, podiums, top 5s, 10s. I mean, 252 races.
yeah.
That's pretty strong,
It wasn't bad.
Yeah.
It wasn't bad. Good run.
Well, we really appreciate you taking time out of your day. I know you've got a lot going on in your world right now, and to come up, talk about Moto Blueprint. Let's stay on top of how that evolves and what we can do to help you in that process. But appreciate everybody listening to Future MX Radio. I mean, we got another episode down here. We're going to keep them coming. We're getting the YouTube channel is going to be up and running here in the very near future. We're going to start getting some videos put together to put on YouTube. So if you don't mind sharing those and give them a watch and let us know what you think. And we hope to see you guys at all the different races and come up and tell us what you think about the show and give us your honest feedback. We love to hear it. But I greatly appreciate you taking time out of your day. Make sure you spread the word to all your friends and family, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, man. See ya.